Around the world, beneath the surface of everyday life, a silent crisis has taken root, one that affects families, communities, and entire nations. It is the crisis of missing girls and the impact on men in various regions, especially in Asia. It critically examines historical and contemporary issues such as son preference, female infanticide, and sex-selective abortion. According to the book Unnatural Selection and the Pulitzer Prize-winning author Hvistendahl, there are approximately 160 million missing girls worldwide, primarily due to gender-biased practices. The narrative touches on China's infamous one-child policy, its drastic enforcement measures, including forced sterilizations and abortions, and the subsequent gender imbalance that has created a surplus of unmarried men, often referred to as bare branches, leading to socioeconomic and psychological problems. The roots of this crisis stretch back centuries. In many traditional societies, particularly across Asia, a preference for sons has shaped family structures and social hierarchies. Sons are seen as bearers of the family name, caretakers of parents in old age, and inheritors of property. Daughters, in contrast, have often been viewed as burdens, destined to marry into other families, requiring costly dowries, and unable to carry on the paternal lineage. These attitudes have been codified in stories, legal codes, and everyday practices, forming a powerful undercurrent that influences decisions at every level of society. The advent of modern medicine and technology in the late 20th century brought both hope and new challenges. Ultrasound machines, initially hailed as tools for promoting maternal and child health, quickly became instruments of gender selection. In societies where the birth of a son is celebrated and that of a daughter lamented, the ability to know the sex of a fetus before birth offered families a way to act upon their preferences with unprecedented precision. Sex-selective abortions became widespread, particularly in countries like China and India, where cultural son preference intersected with state policies and economic pressures. Few policies have had as profound an impact as China's one-child policy, introduced in 1980. Aimed at curbing population growth, the policy was enforced with an iron fist. Millions of forced sterilizations, abortions, and mandatory usage of intrauterine devices swept across the country. Families faced with the prospect of having only one child often made the painful choice to ensure that child was a son. The result was a dramatic skewing of the natural sex ratio at birth. Today, it is estimated that tens of millions of girls are missing from the population, a demographic deficit that has changed the very fabric of Chinese society. But the consequences of gender imbalance are not confined to statistics. With far more men than women reaching adulthood, a generation of so-called bare branches, unmarried men without prospects for family, has emerged. For these men, the inability to fulfill traditional roles as husbands and fathers brings not only personal sorrow, but also social instability. Studies have shown that large populations of unmarried men are associated with increased rates of violence, crime, and psychological distress. The biological underpinnings are complex, but one factor often cited is testosterone, the hormone linked to aggression and risk-taking. Young, unmarried men are statistically more prone to involvement in violent incidents, especially in societies where their lack of marital prospects is seen as a failure. The scarcity of women has also transformed marriage itself. In regions where the imbalance is most acute, women have become highly sought after, sometimes treated less as individuals and more as commodities. Practices such as bride buying have resurfaced, with families and brokers arranging marriages, often across borders, to meet the demand for wives. International marriage agencies have sprung up, offering women from poorer countries as potential brides for men unable to find partners at home. While some of these unions may be genuine, many are transactional, raising concerns about exploitation and the erosion of women's autonomy. At the heart of these developments lies a stark reality. When women become scarce, their value in the marriage market rises, but their freedom may paradoxically diminish. Economic incentives for families to have sons remain strong, especially where sons are expected to support parents and inherit assets. Meanwhile, The expectations placed on women to marry, to bear children, to conform to traditional norms can intensify in settings where their choices are already constrained. The phenomenon of missing girls is not limited to China. India, too, has grappled with a long history of son preference, sex-selective abortion, and, in some cases, female infanticide. Advances in prenatal screening have made it easier than ever to act on gender preferences, despite legal bans on sex-selective abortions. Other countries, from Azerbaijan to Vietnam, show similar patterns, demonstrating that this is a global problem shaped by local circumstances. The effects ripple outward in unexpected ways. In communities with lopsided sex ratios, competition for brides can drive up dowry payments, burdening families and fueling cycles of debt. The psychological toll on women, who may be pressured to marry quickly or endure unwanted advances, is hard to quantify but deeply felt. At the macro level, a surplus of men can undermine social cohesion, strain public resources, and even threaten political stability. Yet, amid these challenges, there are glimmers of hope. Recognizing the dangers of demographic imbalance, some governments have begun to adjust course. China has relaxed its population control policies, first allowing 2 children per family, then 3. Campaigns to promote the value of daughters, encourage gender equality, and outlaw discriminatory practices have gained traction. In some regions, changing economic realities, greater educational and employment opportunities for women, are slowly reshaping attitudes toward gender and family. But progress is uneven, and the legacy of decades of gender-biased policies and practices will not be erased overnight. Deep-seated cultural norms, combined with economic pressures, continue to drive families toward son preference. The technology that enabled the crisis, ultrasound, abortion, and assisted reproduction, remains widely available, often without adequate regulation or oversight. Addressing this crisis requires more than policy changes. It demands a reevaluation of the values and assumptions that underpin societies. It calls for education, for the empowerment of women, for the creation of economic and social systems that do not penalize families for having daughters. It also requires international cooperation, as the effects of demographic imbalance do not respect national borders. In the end, the story of missing girls is a story about the value of human life, about the costs of treating one gender as more valuable than another. It is a reminder that the consequences of such choices extend far beyond the immediate family, shaping the destinies of nations and generations to come. As we confront this crisis, we are called not only to mourn the lost lives, but to build a future where every child, regardless of gender, is welcomed, cherished, and given the chance to thrive. Don't forget to like, comment to receive the new videos.